Hello, everybody. My name is Jose Antonio Ndiviela. I work for Microsoft, leading the initiative of smart cities in Western Europe. And I'm also a research associated to the University Francisco Victoria here in Madrid, specialized on cities. It's for me a pleasure to act as moderator for this webinar. And it's a pleasure also because of the high quality of the other people that are joining me today. So let me just introduce the three people that will share these minutes with us. First of all, we have Mr. Mansour Hanif from NEOM. Can you introduce yourself and talk about your role?
Sure, thank you, and thanks for the invite to be here today. And yes, I'm Mansour Hanif. I'm the Executive Director for Emerging Technologies in the Technology and Digital sector at NEOM. And for those of you who aren't aware of NEOM, we are an accelerator of human progress. And so the future of cities is very much what we live and breathe every single day. I've been here for just over 18 months. We're focusing on mixed realities, sustainable technologies for cities, but also space and robotics and a number of other areas such as metaverses within the tech and digital sector. In NEOM, my background is in telecommunications. I worked around the world, but yeah, I'm delighted to be here on the seminar today and join you all.
Thank you very much, Mansour. Let me also introduce Mr. Tanguy Koenen from the Belgian research institution IMEC. Tanguy.
Yes, good afternoon and thanks for inviting me. So yeah, I'm Tanguy. I work for IMEC, which is an RTO, a research and technology organization in Belgium. We do a lot of work in smart cities, looking at their digital transformation, working with technologies like IoT and artificial intelligence, and really looking at new ways to do decision support and decision making in cities.
Perfect. And last but not least, let me introduce Iot Ai. Iot is a super expert architect on the very famous Estonian digital interconnection system, and now is working for the private sector, trying to replicate this project in other places in the world. Iot.
Hello, everyone. My experience comes from a tiny country in Northern Europe called Estonia, and I've been working for the public sector there for almost 10 years. And we've been quite successful in creating something called e-Estonia, and I will shed some light to it, what it means and how we got there. But currently I am more involved through my own company called Vertical Digital in digital transformation projects. And we are working in Central America to create a modern tech city called Honduras Prospera. And hopefully I can tell you more about that.
Wonderful. So we are very fortunate to count today with three of the leading institutions or examples around what cities can do to reboot, to revamp the economy, the social aspect, and also to cope with the environmental sustainability challenges and make better cities and most prosperous cities, inclusive and sustainable cities. We have the largest smart city project, that is NEOM. We have the highest reputed research institution in the world dedicated to cities. We have IMEC, and also we have the largest project in terms of interoperability and integrating all the different components of a large city, or in this case, the whole country of Estonia. So we are very fortunate to count on you today. We are living unprecedented times. We can think that our cities were living in the comfort of just associating sustainability to environmental sustainability. But now, because of the COVID, they need to cope with other kinds of sustainability, the economic and the social sustainability. It's clear that the pandemic all of our social aspects in our society, and it's clear that all the businesses that are very much depending on the socialization, let's say the tourism, commerce, recreation, hospitality, travel, has been very, very much damaged, and we need to help them recover. Also, from the social point of view, it's clear that the healthcare and education will never be the same as we were accustomed. And also, we need to provide the additional digital rights that the citizens are very much demanding. Urban mobility and the way we are using the city spaces will also drastically change because of the social distances, because of the reduction in the use of cars and the shortage of the micro electric vehicles. This is also contributing to the main and the first objective, that is the environmental sustainability, reshaping the city, reusing all the city spaces to finally project our cities as areas absolutely carbon neutral or carbon negative, and also the way we are managing the waste, creating circular cities. A lot of changes, a lot of challenges to cope, and the idea is to talk about them for some minutes in the format of different questions that I will ask our experts today, and they can provide us their vision on these specific topics. So let's start by Mansour and Tanguy. The idea is, well, recovery may take longer or shorter, but it's clear that it will be green. What is, in your opinion, the role of cities in achieving these carbon neutral or global warming combat targets? Mansour?
Yeah, very, very great and relevant question. And it's interesting in your intro, you mentioned about how things have changed, and the concept of sustainability has been expanded from purely environmental to, I would say, holistic, including social and including economic. And what's interesting is when I joined NEOM a year and a half ago, it seemed like a strange concept that we would have, as you mentioned, the biggest futuristic city project, which is an accelerator of human progress, with the three pillars at the time, which were sustainability, livability, and economic progress. And but now, as you've mentioned, what seemed strange at the time, or a little bit different to what everybody else was doing, is now mainstream. This is the huge change that has come about. So from our point of view, it was always our plan. It was what drew people like me to NEOM, to build this new feature. And now, unfortunately, it's a negative impact of COVID, which has accelerated the whole world into seeing things in the same way. So it's just interesting to see how it's mainstream now. And specifically to your question, I think on the one hand, it's a bit of a paradox where we know that the carbon usage is very much linked to transport, worldwide transport, and linked to agriculture, as well as urban areas. But also we know that the vast majority of the world's population live in urban areas, and that's going to continue. So it's very clear that cities have a massive part to play in sustainability for the future. And as you mentioned, circular economy is very key. In cities, the opportunities to actually implement integrated systems that can optimize things holistically across the whole city infrastructure to permit that circular economy are bigger than anywhere else. And that's why we think that planning a city infrastructure in an integrated way is the best way forward. Now, obviously in NEOM, we're very lucky to be building from scratch, where we have no legacy infrastructure. So we've basically taken the approach of sustainability by design from the very beginning. We have, that fortune that we can start from scratch and build it into the economic fabric, the social fabric, and as well as the environmental ecosystems. So, however, there are similar things that can be done in cities across the world. But in NEOM, we see ourselves as kind of a template for the cities of the future that are sustainable by design. And I think one of the areas that that is very specific to what should be done in the future that wasn't done perhaps in the past is really raising the ambition of 100% green energy is now the new ambition for everybody. The big issue to that, of course, is storage, because we know that we can get a long way through solar and through wind. And in NEOM, we plan to have about 73% of our energy produced by solar and wind. But how do you actually get to the 100% to manage the fluctuations of that green energy? And that's something that we think that in the future, cities will integrate into their urban planning. The way you store the green energy across the city infrastructure, it's never been developed into the urban design in the way we're doing it in NEOM. So the storage, whether it's gravity storage, whether it's other compressed air storage, is built into the fabric of the urban development. And that's just one of the areas which I think is evolving now that will, that we hope to develop as a template for future cities as we go forward.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Brilliant proposal and brilliant strategy from NEOM. What's your opinion, Tanguy, on these challenges related to environmental sustainability?
Yes, indeed, very interesting question. So, yeah, I think this holistic aspect is also the way in which we are looking at it. So, I think green aspects are, or climate change is really an example of a wicked problem. So, it's a problem that can be looked at from different angles. It's really complex to get an answer about such problems. You need a lot of disciplines that really are able to work together to address such a problem. And I think that the powerful thing about cities is that really they create a context for all of these disciplines to come together and together address these types of problems. So for us, at IMEC, the way in which we are addressing the tackling of these wicked problems is really to look at two types of technologies. One is what we call the data spaces, and the other ones are the urban digital twins. And so if you want to have the collaboration of different disciplines that actually address a certain complex problem like climate change, then you really need to provide them with the right tools. So it's complicated. You need to understand the relationships between different areas within your city. So, for example, if you make changes to your traffic situation, this will have an impact of the amount on the amount of greenhouse gas emissions you will have, for example. So it's really important to understand these complex interplays between different domains. And to do that, you need to be able to share the data sets that exist within these different domains. There's really a lot of activity on what is called data spaces at the moment. And so really making sure that the different actors, the different organizations that own the relevant data to the certain problem domain, in this case, climate change, can actually share their data from a technical point of view and are also motivated to do so. So it's not only a technological problem, but it's also a kind of a business model and a governance problem. Then if you have this knowledge that is, or data that is able to flow within your data space, then of course you need to be able to do something with that data. And that's where the digital twins come in. So the local or the urban digital twins, as they are often called, that provide or that build a digital replica of your city and that allow you to really improve the decision making based on these data spaces. So there you can actually provide the graphical user interfaces and the machine learning models that do something interesting with the data that comes out of all these IoT sensors and all these databases of the relevant stakeholders that exist within your city. And taking these two technologies together and applying it to a city with all the disciplines and all the actors from the quadruple helix, so the citizens, the research institutes, the companies, and the government itself, acting together, I think has a good chance of improving our odds of tackling climate change.
That's wonderful. And now we move to Iot. And let's talk about the shortage of professionals the cities are now facing to cope with all these challenges. It's clear that the mix of occupations is changing with the post-COVID era. STEM professionals, science, technology, engineering, maths professionals are more appreciated than ever. And in your opinion, how will cities cope with this professional shortage, or in the other hand, the rise of wages needed to hire them?
I would say that the shortage of this kind of STEM professionals was already there before the pandemic, and we've been kind of moving in that direction where STEM is more and more sought after. We have the similar problem in Estonia. We are about 20,000 IT specialists short, and how we have actually solved it, or we are in a path to solving it, is that the private entrepreneurs have taken a more active role because they are the ultimate beneficiaries. They need the talent, and governments are usually quite slow at solving these kinds of problems, and especially how to solve the problem of talent. It's basically education, but education takes a while. It's not that you start a school and then the next year you have a bunch of talent ready to be deployed. So what our private entrepreneurs did was to create their own school, and they created a somewhat of a vocational school for IT workforce. They launched now this year in September. What we have done on the government side, so my speciality with e-residency, which was a digital identity program to get more and more people involved with Estonia without physically coming to Estonia. So, but that was more geared towards opening up companies and contributing to the economy. We also created a program called Digital Nomad Visa. And surprisingly, a lot of governments followed with a program like that after the pandemic. But in Estonia, we actually started creating it before because of the shortage of the people, exactly the STEM people or professionals. And the concept was that if you're a freelancer, you are traveling around constantly, you don't have one place or a base or so to say home. And it often happens that they are not legally working in any country. And Estonia kind of planned to have this environment created for these trendy term is digital nomads, but I would call them freelancers, people who are working for multiple companies, corporations, not in one long 50-year long career in one company. And we have attracted quite many of them, and they actually have moved to Estonia. We have offered them to stay in our country for 12 months, and quite many of them have actually become residents after that and have stayed. So it is complex. There are solutions, but education is definitely the main one, but it takes time.
Wonderful. Let's go back to Tanguy and let's talk about the resiliency and the security. It's clear that the cities has responded to the pandemic, but now is the moment to take care of the critical supply, providing the needed resiliency for the city, and also managing the cybersecurity. And we know that most of our cities are now impacted by cyber threats, ransomware, etc. How are our cities responding to those challenges, in your opinion?
Yes, I think indeed that has really become a very pressing matter. So really more taking your question by the critical infrastructure angle. So we've really seen that there have been a number of impacts of COVID on our ability to operate a critical supply chain, critical infrastructure, let's say. And this, of course, goes through, well, the ability of people to operate this critical infrastructure. Because, well, what happens in times of a pandemic? Well, people get ill, or as we now very much understand, their movement is sometimes restricted. So it sometimes becomes hard to operate this critical infrastructure or the supply chain that goes along with it. So I think there's three ways in which we are currently seeing cities respond to that, and society at large. I think the first one is the most extreme one. It's about the idea there is, okay, how do you eliminate or reduce the impact of ill people on critical infrastructure? That is through automation. So just eliminating the need for people to operate critical infrastructure. More and more, we're seeing these kind of innovations coming through, having autonomous types of vehicles, for example, autonomous trucks, autonomous vans, autonomous barges on your inland waterways that are being steered by artificially intelligent algorithms. This is still in development, so it's going to take a couple of years before we're actually at ease of seeing these types of autonomous actors populate our streets and our society, I think. And also we should be realistic and understand that not everything can be automated, right? There's still a lot where human minds are still way better than automatic control. And so that brings us to the second type of scenario through which our society could become more resilient to COVID disruptions or pandemic disruptions. And that's through teleoperation. And so it's not really about automation there. You still have people operating certain machines within the field, but very often they do it from a control center. And so this allows you to control more types of, for example, autonomous trucks or autonomous barges by one person. And so these autonomous vehicles can become mostly autonomous, and then in situations where they are uncertain of what to do or where it becomes really critical that they do well, you can have a human teleoperate these vehicles. And then the last one is really about planning ahead of the pandemic. It's really about creating scenarios to understand the impact of your pandemic on the critical infrastructure that you need to run your organization through what is called the cascading effects. So you've got your complex system that has a whole number of causal effects that are interrelated, and understanding the effect of the pandemic on all these different aspects that can go wrong together with it, and planning ahead to become more prepared for your pandemic impact, I think is important. And it's also something where digital twins, for example, can help.
Okay, perfect. Let's talk about teleworking and the space needed for that in offices after the pandemic. So, Mansour, the idea is McKinsey estimates that 22% of the workforces in advanced economies could work from home between 3 to 5 days a week. This represents 4 to 5 times more remote working than before the pandemic. In addition, it is planned to reduce office space by 30%. So they are planning to incorporate social distancing strategies into the workplace without enlarging the real estate footprint. What will be the impact of teleworking and space needs in our cities? Is this an opportunity to reassess the public buildings usage and find the space to allocate additional services or activities?
Yeah, well, certainly, if McKinsey have said that, it must be true. So we all, of course, believe that is the future. I'm joking, but I think everybody's understood that work is never going to be the same again. Everybody is understanding now that space is a precious thing, whether it's in the private realm or in the public realm. Livability is on everybody's minds now, and balance. So our approach to this is really acknowledging that we're never going to be the same again. I mean, COVID has left what I sometimes consider like a scar on the global conscience of society, which we will recover from. for sure. It will come back stronger, but it's going to change us. So what we think we need to do is change completely the way we design our cities and design our public and private spaces to cater for what you've described as the new, a new adaptability, a new flexibility, a new resiliency, a new way of sharing. And that's why we're saying that, you know, smart cities are no longer smart enough. Even the smartest cities in the world. What we need is what we call cognitive cities, is what we are designing in NEOM, is the cities that understand in real time people's needs. And following on to what Tanguy mentioned, you know, data is key to that. Today, smart cities only use maybe, I don't know, 5-10% of urban data is used because of the silos, because we don't have these data spaces, as Tanguy mentioned. And that's what we need to change the whole debate. In NEOM, we want to make sure that people's data is used transparently in the service of citizens. Once you do that, then you can actually employ that data for the benefit of the citizens in a transparent and secure way, responsibly. So that's what we mean by a cognitive city, is a city that understands people's needs in real time and can adapt. So we would employ that data to adapt in real time public spaces and private spaces according to the needs of any moment. So, for example, in the time of a pandemic, how many of us have been walking around and you see lines drawn on the floor or lines drawn in the street in terms of it's 2 meters now, it's 1.5 meters tomorrow. But actually, it really depends how many people are in a room, how many people are in a public space, what's the level of air conditioning, etc. All of that data can be used for public and private spaces. And then if you have the digital technology to make spaces adaptive, and that can change the public furniture and the private furniture in your home. So you can work from your home in the same space as you had breakfast in the morning. You can adapt the furniture so that it adapts to your needs during the day. And the same with public furniture, where you can adapt the social distancing measures through digital technologies rather than drawing lines on the floor. We think that is the only way forward to really make that balance between safety and social distancing and making the best use of the public and private space.
And what's your opinion about the same question, Odd, about the new way of working, teleworking, the new need, the reuse of the city center? Opinion, Odd?
I guess for us Estonians, we were living in that kind of world before, and we were trying to tell everyone in the world that you have to digitize your government services, and you need to have a backup. And for us, it was logical because we, again, as Mansour mentioned with NEOM, that we didn't have any legacy when we became free from the Soviet Union in the 1990s. So we managed to kind of leave behind the existing technologies that kind of leave. And we had voting, so to say, when we voted for our presidential prime minister or local elections from our computer already in the early 2000s. And when the pandemic hit, then we had a lot of organizations from Europe, from US coming to us and asking, please help us to digitally transform ASAP, because our people can't come to the office. We can't push around the paper cards. We can't sign anything. Our work is completely stopped and we don't know what to do. And for us, it was a painful moment in that sense that we didn't want to say, we told you so already for the past 10 years that you should do it. And now with this kind of sad development, everybody has come on, and digital transformation is at its peak, I imagine. That's why we are so short of the IT professionals, and it will continue to be so. What we are doing in Central America, for example, so we are building residential and office space, and we are building co-working spaces inside the new residential buildings, for example. So people they don't have to have a tiny little office inside their apartment, but they can have co-working spaces either in the roof or in the basement, where you could share your working experience with others. As we researched them over the years, we understood that we want to be together with like-minded people. They want to share, they want to learn, and still we are social creatures by our nature. So even if we don't go to the office, we still like to talk the water cooler talk with some people. Also, what I think my personal theory is with what's happening with the pandemic and e-commerce is that department stores, huge malls and department stores that we are building today, I think at some point we will understand that they are quite useless and we have to transform them. I'm not sure into what, but maybe Dubai has had a good example of the skiing hills, mountains. But I think that's bound to happen. We have way too many department stores.
That's clear. And well, let's talk about technology. It's clear it has helped us to cope with the pandemic impact. And we have seen the acceleration of technology adoption. 66% of the government managers are saying that they are increasing very, very much the investment in automation and artificial intelligence. Tanguy, what's in your opinion the city areas that are benefiting the most from this increase in technology adoption? Is the IoT infrastructure, or is the citizen services, or is the analytics and decision support, or the advanced artificial intelligence and predictive systems?
Yes, I think to me, and like what we are working on in cities at the moment, from an IMEC point of view, the real game-changing technologies that we see for the coming years are really, well, of course, IoT. It's been around for 10 to 15 years. We've seen a lot of work in creating new types of sensors that can measure all kinds of interesting things in your city. I don't think we've seen the end of that. I think it will remain for the coming decade. Many new developments are in the pipeline there. Then, of course, if you have data, that's great, but what are you going to do with it? You need interesting and good algorithms. Many of them are developed in the AI domain, and they really add value to your data that you can then use to build better decision support systems, to really allow people in cities to take better decisions. And then the last one, I think, and that's the one that probably will see most development in the coming years, I think, and it's still quite in its infancy, is robotics. So having automated machines that populate our cities and that do many things, like, for example, deliver all kinds of things to our doorsteps. You can have autonomous drones, or you can have autonomous vehicles that really make sure that your groceries are delivered quite quickly to your doorstep, just to give one example. And so if you take these three topics, IoT, AI, and robotics, well, this can be applied to many different urban domains. We're seeing a lot of activity in the mobility space. Our cities, they are still, many of them are still very congested. And also, I mean, this mobility can be quite unsafe. It can be quite dangerous to navigate all the traffic. And also it's polluting. So it pollutes our air quality, and it pollutes it produces a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So really, we're seeing a lot of applications in that domain to understand, for example, through IoT and AI, how your air quality would be impacted by changing mobility flows. Also, making new types of mobility as a service applications in cities also requires new types of measuring things and predicting things with AI. Then there's, of course, a lot of work on pandemics management. This has become very top of mind recently. For example, being able to predict how many people are at a certain point in a city. So you don't want to have too many people at once at one location in your city. So how are people flowing through your city, and how can you predict how people will be flowing through your city within the coming hours, let's say, and how can you do something about it? That's also something that we see a lot of activity in. Then there's everything that comes that is related to climate change, of course, and one of the examples is flood prediction. So in Europe, we've had a very rough summer in terms of floods, and we've seen this all over the world. So you get a lot of flash floods where a lot of rain is falling in a very short amount of time. So we should be able to predict these kind of things, so that, for example, emergency responders can do something about this and be prepared to react. And then the last one, of course, is about logistics and urban logistics. New ways to do last mile logistics, to redistribute freight that comes into your city on an ecologically friendly transportation mode, like, for example, a barge on a river, that then can be redistributed using, for example, autonomous ecologically friendly vehicles to the stores and to people's homes where it is needed.
Okay, perfect. And what's your vision on that, Mansour? Which are the areas in the city or the best technologies that are receiving this increased adoption?
Yeah, certainly I agree with what Tanguy has mentioned. Maybe I can just add some comments around how we're approaching it in NEOM. I mean, for infrastructure, certainly we are, everything is software based now. So we define our architecture for our infrastructure and IoT integrated with that as software defined everything. And that's more and more feasible today. And that really supports full automation in a way that we couldn't do before, as it's much more flexible and adaptable to real-time changes. Automation obviously is very key. Transport, mobility, as mentioned. You may have heard that on the line, our flagship urban development, there will be no cars. It's only going to be automated transport. And so we're really taking the challenge right up front. All of that requires a huge capability of computing. So totally agree that we need to predict as much as possible. Prediction requires a huge amount of calculations. So we need the data, we need the calculations. So we need a bespoke cognitive compute architecture is what we're calling it, to move from being reactive to being predictive and understanding people's needs. That's a huge undertaking, but it's the, we're lucky in NEOM that we've taken that up front and are actually designing that cognitive architecture that can predict people's needs and cater for them. But it really has to be human-centric. So while all of that is great and the digital government is absolutely a key, we've learned a lot from what Iot and his team did in Estonia, taking that to the next level, having everything pretty much provisioned for citizens automatically with their ultimate control and transparency for the citizen. And I think all of that needs to be put into the hands of the citizens. So when we talk about decision making, that's really important to optimize the livability in a city. But what we really need to be doing is empower citizens' decision making, and really removing a lot of the day-to-day tasks that just eat up our time and energy, which we really don't want to do, and allow people to really think about their impact of their daily deeds and their daily actions every day. So what we'd really like to do is to give people a simple way to understand the impact of anything they do. In a way, a kind of a shadow of their footprint on the world. And then they can decide what they want to do with that. So in simple terms, understanding your carbon impact of the choices you make every day, understanding the food chain of what you go to the shop to buy, what's the impact on the local economy. So to do this in a way that is so easy and simple for people to understand, and then empowers people to make those responsible choices. So it's really the decision-making power. Yes, it's important for the city infrastructure, but at the same time, it needs to give that decision-making power back to each of us, so we can make informed choices and hopefully, make the world a better place through simply knowing what is the impact of your actions.
That's clear. That's clear. The social impact of technologies, the many changes that cities are now making to improve their citizens' life, no? And this is raising a question more from the philosophical than from the technology point of view, no? But let's take advantage of your super experience and skills to manage that. In your opinion, will this new city transformation mean something like a renaissance on the appreciation of human arts, human social spaces, everything that is more human? And do you think our cities will become more human? Iot, what's your opinion?
Well, I sincerely hope so. though I'm not seeing it today yet. I think I can go back to the point where the last kind of few decades have been golden years for office-based developers, right? I mean, people are just or companies are more and more hiring. They're building more. They're renting out, releasing all the offices, and the metropolis areas are growing, right? And now all of a sudden these kind of areas are empty, or the companies realize that hey, we don't have to pay for that. That people could just work, from their hotel room, home, from a booth, wherever. And the digital nomads or the freelancers that I was telling you, the younger generation, they already understood before the pandemic that they don't have to be in one place. They could travel around. They don't have to work for the same company. So I think they are the ones, the next generations or the younger generations will be the ones who are bringing this more of a human touch back, less corporate, less capitalist. I think their value system is a bit different. They don't believe in owning property, for example, and they don't want to have too many things, which is great. And I hope that they will bring back the renaissance, so to say.
And what's your vision on that, Angie? Do you think this human renaissance and the appreciation for everything, arts, social spaces will be very much appreciated in the next years?
Well, I also share this hope because in the last, 10 to 15 years of doing smart city work, I think we've seen quite a few projects fail because they lacked the inclusive approach that is necessary to do digital transformation within a city context. Every city has its own identity, its own mix of cultures, of people living there. And it's quite clear that if you approach this digital transformation from a very top-down way, it will fail. It will not take root, and the change that you install will not be sustainable. So that really has led to a new type of thinking on co-design with citizens in cities. And I think if you talk to citizens and you really reflect on the shape that a digital transformation should have within the city, then quite automatically you end up not only with functional parameters, not only with parameters that pertain to efficiency or effectiveness, but also that appeal to people's emotions and to the fit with the local urban context. And so if you're going to do that, well, then you need to involve the people that are good about making sure that the things that we create reflect our emotions. And these are quite typically the artists and the people in the humanities that have been doing this for ages. And so I think that's probably going to bring about a change. So we really need these multidisciplinary teams. We don't only need the engineers to instill technological change. We really want to have them as much as possible work together with people that understand how to make digital transformation more human, more beautiful. And so I think this is also something that is starting to become, or there is an awareness growing with decision makers, policy makers as well. And so one of the examples is the new and upcoming Digital Bauhaus European program that really calls for reflecting on how to make our digital technologies more beautiful, more inclusive in cities.
So let's talk about the increased level of automatization in our cities. COVID has accelerated the adoption of many of these new city automatisms. So do we think that we are moving towards the concept of the cyber managed, automated, or city? What do you think about that, Mansour?
Yeah, certainly, and I think it follows on from the previous discussion, which is fascinating, and I totally agree. I'm a huge optimist. You need to be an optimist if you believe you can accelerate human progress as we do in NEOM. So yes, I do believe that humanism is going to be the future for all cities as we go forward. And what we believe in is what we call digital humanism. So where digitization is clearly used to enhance the quality of human life and the appreciation of human art and the human life in all its beauty. And so, yes, we will see a lot more automation, but and we will see urban development fusing digital technologies into all of infrastructure. But the way we'd like to architect that digital humanism and making sure that the automation is at the service of humans is, in a way, if you look at in the spacecraft of the past, when we sent the Voyager out to the universe and we collected the essence of what is humanity into physical records that were sent with a spacecraft, so that if they encountered whatever type of alien life forms, they would be able to transmit what is a human, what are human beings in all its beauty and diversity and inclusion. So we're trying to do the same thing in distilling the essence of what it is to be human and embedding that into our technology and into our architecture. And this is it's a fascinating world to live in, where you're working with architects and technologists. And it's a fascinating way to bring to life, what it is to be human into the architecture of the spaces. So we'll have a lot more information about what we're doing coming up soon. But the other key thing is, we mentioned digital twins as the key way to control that automated architecture, as in a way, just like cyborgs. That is a key part of what we're developing. And the difference of what we're doing here is we don't see a digital twin as a tool. We see it as an extension of the city. And it's absolutely fundamental to the creation of that city. So the future metaverse is what we're developing, where basically all the automated infrastructure we're developing, including the 100,000 humanoid robots we will have by 2030 as avatars, they are being trained in that metaverse right now that we're developing, because from their point of view, it's the same thing. A real-time digital twin and the physical world is the same, seen from the view of an automat. And therefore, it's really important that that digital extension is built before the physical world. In our case, we're able to do that because we're building them at the same time. That way you can train the automatons and the robots and the avatars and the cyborgs to react with the physical world before they actually get into the physical world. That's only possible today because the metaverses that we're building now completely simulate the physical world. So they have gravity, they have the physics laws in the digital world that this wasn't possible to do before. So this is why I do believe that we will be able to develop these automated technologies, semi-controlled by humans, in a way that benefits humans through these new techniques.
That's fascinating. And then a final question to Iot. Iot, you talk about many times about nomads, the role they are playing in the technology adoption, working from everywhere, no? So what's your opinion about people are moving to the extended metropolitan city? They have understood that they can work from these nearby areas, and also the decrease in the need of very expensive offices downtown is also pushing in this same direction. What do you think about that?
I guess I already touched that topic a little bit in the previous discussion, where I said that the department stores are or will be disappearing. I don't think that these fancy office buildings will stay abandoned for too long. I mean, always there will be another project taking them over, whether it be high-value residential areas or spas or hotels, whatever. But it's clear that we don't need that much office space as we have built, and there is some transformation happening. In Prospera, what we're doing with all the office spaces is basically we're solving two problems. One problem is that the people in that area, regionally in Central America, are not as privileged as much of European US has been. And they are very hardworking, and their talent level is the same. But unfortunately, due to corruption, administrative processes, we don't have equal opportunities. And The other problem that we are solving is there is no foreign direct investment to these regions. So what we are bridging, we are connecting these two through an e-platform. We're giving the locals a platform to find good, equally challenging work for a fair price. And we're giving the companies, the people who are actually in search of this talent, new people, and they can all do this remotely. But we need some offices for these people on the island of Roatan. So we're bringing them together in a few office spaces there. So nothing abandoned usually stays abandoned, would be my final thought.
Okay, so I think we have reached to the end. Let me say, first of all, thank you very, very much, Absolute, on what the cities are doing right now to cope with the post-COVID area. We had talked about the green agenda. We had talked about the digital technology adoption, the new workforce, and the new behavior and patterns from our citizens in the use of the tools and also in the use of the spaces in our city. And also we had talked about the need of protecting the supply chains, achieving the expected level of resilience, and protecting the security of our citizens and our services. I think this has been super, very inspiring. Again, thank you very much, and let's hope the audience is thinking the same. So have a nice day, and thank you very much. Bye-bye.